let's go ahead and dive in to the Indianapolis Colts here and their selections. First of all, they made a trade with the Vikings to move back in the draft, so their first selection wasn't until pick 53. They did get to pick, 3 times in the third round, so that was pretty nice. Because they made 4 selections total. So
that's right, because they traded away one of their third picks, or
they traded away their extra 4th rounder and got
an extra third when they moved up to get Nick Cross.
So, their first selection, round 2, pick 53, they got Alec Pierce, wide receiver out of Cincinnati. I know that's a guy that B. Scott and I both had our eyes on.
What's funny, though, is the guy that I think you had picked to the Colts, got picked 1 pick later.
1 pick earlier, Wan'Dale Robinson.
No, I thought you had Sky Moore.
Oh, no, I didn't have Sky Moore. Okay. I had Alec Pierce, Wan'Dale Robinson, and I had a tight end out of Texas A&M. I can't remember. Okay. Then speaking of tight ends, round 3, pick 73, Jelani Woods out of Virginia. He gets selected there. Round 3, pick 77, Bernard Raymond, offensive tackle out of Central Michigan. Maction showing up. And then the final pick of day 2 for the Colts, round 3, pick 96, Nick Cross, safety out of Maryland. Then on day 3, round 5, pick 159, Eric Johnson, defensive tackle out of Missouri State.
Love that pick. In the
6th round, pick 192, Andrew Ogletree, tight end out of Youngstown State. Round 6, pick 216, Curtis Brooks, defensive tackle out of Cincinnati. And in round 7, Rodney Thomas, safety out of Yale. So those were the Colts draft picks. So you're high on Eric Johnson, huh? Because I definitely hadn't heard of him before. But yeah, I guess.
Well, I guess for me, it's a little different.
Yeah.
I covered FCS football last year. So it's like, oh yeah, Eric Johnson out of Missouri State. And then you got Andrew Ogletree out of Youngstown State and Rodney Thomas out of Yale. I mean, these guys I've actually heard of before. But the one that excites me the most is Eric Johnson. I mean, this kid's got a motor and a mean streak to him. Set him alongside. I mean, eventually this is going to be the guy that will slide in for Grover Stewart when that time comes. And him alongside as a rotational piece, put him next to DeForest Buckner. Oh my gosh, that's going to be a good one. I really like that one. And Jelani Woods, that is a sneaky, really good pick. I think, honestly, if there's 2 guys in this draft outside of Eric Johnson, obviously, that have a chance to become big time names for the Colts, because there's always at least 1 or 2 guys that do it here recently. Jelani Woods is one, because I think he's going to be for the Colts what they've always thought Mo Alley Cox would be. And so Jelani Woods and then Bernard Raymond. I think this is a guy that would have been a 1st-round pick easily, but they were all worried that his arms weren't long enough. Oh, come on.
That's always
that's honestly that is what this whole draft was. Like, George Karlaftis fell because he had short arms. Oh, stop. Like, what kind of player is he? That's what I want to know. What kind of player is he? Like, this guy, he's going to need some coaching up because he hasn't been playing football very long. I mean, look, he played professional football at the age of 14 in the Netherlands. I mean, he's got the experience. I mean, obviously, oh, wow, he played professional football in the Netherlands. Yeah, but still, I mean,
it just always baffles me when they come out with like critiques like that. It's because it's like, do we not have at least 2 years of highlight film of this player excelling at the collegiate level? And I know that there's a lot of players that, have success at the collegiate level that don't make it to the NFL, but obviously we're talking about him.
There's a lot of guys that have like no success at the collegiate level that come into the NFL as undrafted free agents and blow it all up.
Right.
I honestly, you don't have him on here. It's because he was an undrafted free agent for the Colts. Offensive tackle Tyler Van Dyke out of UConn is a guy that I actually had mocked to the Colts a couple times. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be a battle between him and Bernard because these two guys, that's good. Really, I mean, obviously the Colts really wanted him because they paid like a massive contract to him, like guaranteed money, like really high for an undrafted free agent, 125,000, which is, when you look at NFL contracts, you're like, oh, that's nothing. Like, no, but for a UDFA, that's a lot of money. So yeah, but him and then Nick Cross. If I'm Kari Willis, I'm a little worried. Like I'm ready. I got to step up because Nick Cross, or even I don't know which safety spot he would fit into the most, but tell you what, he's going to be a really good depth piece this year. I know everybody. I was talked about a couple weeks ago. I was like, and they need to figure out the safety position. They let George Odom walk, and the health of Julian Blackmon and Kari Willis isn't always the best. You upgraded over George Odom big time in Nick Cross. Great move. So I really actually liked this draft by the Colts. They kind of went off of what you would typically expect. I don't know. They went down their own route in the later rounds, which a lot of teams do. That's where to me, it's like, it's a crapshoot. When you get to really rounds 6 and 7, it's just like,
well, when I graded,
I need a warm body.
Right. When I graded the Colts draft, I really only based it on the top 5 selections because, there were some, I looked at the grades for all of their picks on ESPN, and some of them were like, "Oh, they get an F for this." I'm like, okay, screw you, ESPN. Like at that point, like, are we really splitting hairs on who was, this guy that was drafted in the 6th round who, the Colts? Obviously, are ESPN? Do you think what the Colts need more than the Colts? Like, do you think? Oh, well, they should have taken this this guy was technically valued higher.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That is exactly what it is right there.
So,
or the Colts need a quarterback, so they left a quarterback on the board, and they took Andrew Ogletree instead. Well, guess what? They still signed Jack Cohn as an undrafted free agent.
Okay.
And a lot of people had him mocked to the Colts. So the Colts got him still.
Yeah.
They didn't use a pick.
Right. So yeah, so speaking of grades, when I'm looking at it, I'm feeling a B with this one. Looking at the grades the ESPN had for the first 5 picks the Colts made, they'd grade out overall to a C+. Now
that's surprising. That's so surprising. Okay. I cannot remember this analyst's name. He was sitting in the middle, not Melkai. He was sitting in the middle of the set on night 1 and 2.
Oh, okay. I was like, I know Louis Riddick was in the middle on
Louis Riddick.
Is Louis Riddick? Okay.
It wasn't Louis. No. Who's the other guy? He's not Louis Riddick. He was always on Mike and Mike in the morning. Oh my
gosh. Mike Golick.
No, it wasn't one of those guys.
Mike Greenberg.
I'm gonna look him up, but
yeah, I will say, it is tough to look at the Titans draft and not be a smidge jealous. Just because that's a team that, of course, had all of their draft picks a little bit more their ducks a little bit more in the row as far as draft picks. Not having the kind of fracas that was the Colts trading for Carson Wentz and then trading him away to get Matt Ryan, because they drafted Treylon Burks in the 1st round. They did draft offensive tackle Nicholas Petit-Frere in the 3rd, and Malik Willis in 3rd as well. Those are 2 players that I would like to have seen on the Colts. And that's the consequence of going for Carson Wentz, which was a move I was on board for. It just kind of stinks a little bit. But this is it went pretty similarly to the mock draft that I had for them, so I think I'm bound by the rules of podcasting to think highly on this draft, which I already did anyway. I had them taking 3 new targets for Matt Ryan, an offensive tackle, and a safety with their first 5 picks. The Colts grabbed 2 new targets for Matt Ryan, an offensive tackle, and a safety in their first 5 picks. Alec Pierce, we raved about him, 884 yards, 8 touchdowns on 52 catches at Cincinnati. player comp to Jordy Nelson and Donovan Peoples-Jones. His pros were that he's big, strong, has toughness to work in the middle of the field, but he wasn't quick on his route running, and I feel like that was something that could be corrected with coaching. Jelani Woods, his player comp is Jordan Thomas, who ironically was a Colt in 2021. Woods had all ACC honors in 2021, 44 catches, 598 yards, and 8 touchdowns. His size is a big pro here, so having him and Mo Alley-Cox, I know you mentioned how he is could be what the Colts thought Mo Alley-Cox could be, but now you basically have two versions of Mo Alley-Cox. But he does need to fill out to become a better blocker. Bernard Raymond, he moved from tight end to offensive tackle during the pandemic, which I thought was pretty wild. He's still developing, but developed fast so far and is projected to have the talent to be a long-time starter at offensive tackle. You've got Nick Cross, 67 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 INTs, 2 forced fumbles, touted as an explosive hitter. They added another potential offensive weapon in Andrew Ogletree, then added more defensive depth in the secondary and defensive line. So overall, we wanted the Colts to get Matt Ryan help, draft the left tackle of the future, and depth on defense, and Chris Ballard did exactly that. So I think looking at this draft, when I look at like an A+ draft, I think more of, along the lines of when they got Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, and maybe that's just the bias of like, oh, those are more notable positions that they were drafted at than some of these positions the Colts needed this year. But I think it was a solid draft. I'm giving it a B overall.
So I'm going to give it an A- overall. Once I find the name of this guy. And
who's in the middle on day 2?
Day 1.
Day 1? Okay. Not Louis Riddick.
Maybe it was it Louis Riddick? I don't know. He's a former NFL executive. I know that.
I think you might be thinking of Louis Riddick.
I might be,
because Louis Riddick I know went on SVP and Russillo / Russillo and Cannell / Will Kane and Ryan Russillo / Russillo and all the guys that co-hosted him before he left. So I think you are thinking of Louis Riddick.
Maybe I am. Yeah, I am. That's him. Yeah, Louis Riddick. He kept saying over and over again, the Colts have won this draft. The Colts not only have won this draft, they've won the offseason. This draft, Chris Ballard was making moves. Everybody seemed to be playing checkers, and he was playing chess. He was super, super, super high on what the Colts were doing, and they would trade back, get more picks, and they would make. It was just we all had these questions of how are they going to fill these holes? And Chris Ballard basically said, "Hold my beer." And he did. He answered the questions. He got weapons. The Colts needed weapons. All right. Guess what? We got weapons. The Colts needed offensive tackle. Guess what? We got one that fell to us that probably should have been much higher. When you look at now, they just needed a little bit more veteran presence. The Colts have done so much through this draft to help get themselves into a position. And I think also they won. In his mind, they also won too because of Tennessee trading A.J. Brown. That catapulted the Colts up in the hierarchy of the AFC South. But when you got your guys super high on the Colts, and then the ESPN only gives them a C+.
Yeah, let me see here. So looking at the Colts, Alec Pierce graded out 82. So he that was a B+ or B- pick. Jelani Woods was graded 75, which I assume this is out of 100. I don't know ESPN, and that's the thing too. It's crazy. You've got guys like Louis Riddick who actually did the darn thing.
So here, this is him. This is him. This is word for word from Louis Riddick. I think Chris Ballard in the Indianapolis Colts killed it. They killed it all offseason with veteran acquisitions like Matt Ryan and Yannick Ngakoue. And then on day 2, they went crazy as far as I'm concerned. They got players that I just love. Alec Pierce in the second round, I think, is going to be a steal for them. Jelani Woods is a monster at tight end, and he is going to be a receiving threat. They got their franchise left tackle in Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan, and then Nick Cross at safety, a guy Todd McShay, I know you like him because he's a fantastic athlete and he can make plays on the ball. And then they get depth with Andrew Ogletree, Curtis Brooks, Rodney Thomas, but they have just put on a clinic as far as team building 101, starting with the veteran free agency market, culminating Saturday in the NFL draft. I think look out for the Colts in the AFC South. So he essentially said not only did they win the 2022 NFL draft, they won the entire offseason.
Pretty incredible.
And this is a guy that, I mean, he says it like it is. I'm not like, he doesn't have play favorites, in my opinion. He's one of the, when he says something, I take it to heart far as like what his analysis is.
And that's what I was getting ready to say too, is just the fact that I would put more stock obviously in what Riddick says because he's done the darn thing. You're also talking about some of the people that grade out those picks that they might have some level of scouting or something like that, but I don't. It's obviously not the same people giving the grades as it is as the guy who actually did the darn thing. So
right, but he's actually done the darn thing.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I like. So I think yeah. I'm giving him an A- just because they hit the nail on the head where they needed to, and then they, like you said, they added depth pieces, but you can't go any higher than an A- really when you don't have a first round pick.
Yeah,
so.
And that's fair. That's completely fair. So looking at which new prospect, which new player for the Colts has you most excited? For me, it might sound odd. I talked a lot about Alec Pierce literally was in my mock draft, so you might think I'm going there, but no, I'm gonna go with Bernard Raymond. I'm going with the MAC player, offensive tackle. First of all, having a tough time not calling him Rain Man. So can we have a petition to have Big Q and the Rain Man be like a Colts themed morning show mini podcast, because that would be amazing. Even if it's just for merch, I would go for that. I can't get over the fact that he made the transition from tight end to O-line in 2021, his first year on the offensive line. He was first team All-MAC. He won the MAC Medal of Excellence for academic and athletic excellence. He's a smart dude. He'll learn and develop fast. He's big. He's from the MAC. I'm sold. There's so many great things about this kid. And I'm really excited to see him alongside Quentin Nelson just being a brick wall on that side of the line. I'm really excited.
Yeah, so for me, I'm actually going to say Nick Cross. I mean, I want to say Jelani Woods just because I feel like he's gonna explode into something really, really good for the Colts, especially if he can pick up a blocking a little bit. But Nick Cross, to me, is just one of those picks that, yeah, he's super athletic. He has a nose for the ball. And this defense for the Colts is just looking better and better every day. And now he's going to be a really good depth piece, and he's going to see the field. And I don't know, I feel like safety just got a lot better with Nick Cross coming into the room as a rookie.
I'm excited to see. So moving forward, the question is, what do you want to see the Colts do? Now I'm gonna go ahead and read off the undrafted free agents, because that's always the big thing too. The Colts win a little hog wild.
They go crazy with.
Yeah, I was with running backs, especially. I'm looking at it and I see 3 running backs already off the board. So you mentioned Jack Cohn, quarterback out of Notre Dame. They also got CJ Verdell, a running back out of Oregon.
That's a guy I had mocked to the Colts as well in a later round. So yeah, I was happy about that.
Yeah, he's good. Max Borghi, running back out of Washington State. Devontae Price, running back out of Florida International. Kakoa Crawford, wide receiver out of California. Samson Nakoa, wide receiver out of BYU. Michael Young Jr., wide receiver out of Cincinnati. Josh.
Apparently, that is one to really keep your eye on.
Really?
So a couple weeks before the draft, the Colts were down in Cincinnati, and it was all broadcasted out that, the Colts are in Cincinnati working out quarterback Desmond Ridder. Well, it was all smokescreen. They were down there working out Alec Pierce and Michael Young. And because those were the targets that they had, they worked out Desmond Ridder, but they were really down there working out Alec Pierce and Michael Young. They knew all along. Michael Young was on their board all along. They knew they needed to target him.
They also got Josh Schultzner, guard out of Wisconsin. Alex Millette, guard out of Marshall. Wesley French, center out of Western Michigan. Ryan Van Denmark.
Yeah, Ryan Van Denmark
out of Connecticut. Yeah. Colin Wick, defensive end out of Tulsa. McKinley Williams, defensive lineman out of Syracuse. Scott Patchen, defensive lineman out of Colorado State. Forrest Ryan, linebacker from Villanova. JoJo Doman, linebacker from Nebraska. Dallas Flowers.
That's a good one, too.
Cornerback out of Pittsburgh State. Sterling Weatherford, linebacker safety out of Miami of Ohio. And Trevor Denbo, safety out of SMU. So
there's one more you forgot.
All the ones that are listed on the stars. So I don't know if
there is one more that has signed. Yeah, wide receiver Jackson Andrew out of Purdue.
There we go. Well, and I was wondering too, because I was like, that's what I wanted them to do. Looking at the undrafted free agents, we made the outline. They hadn't really announced those yet, or hadn't got into them. And that's what I wanted the Colts to do. Look at a quarterback. They get Jackson Cone, because I think, the Colts expressed their desire to have Matt Ryan for 4 years. Which I thought was kind of surprising. I guess that will be through his age 40 or 41 season, so that's not awfully bad as far as. I think that's feasible. Which is what I imagine what they think their window is for being a Super Bowl contender. So I think they need to explore all potential options for Ryan's predecessor. Or not predecessor. I don't think that's the right word for it, but you know what I mean. So they need to bring in, the Jackson Cones. Next year, I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe drafted a quarterback. Depending on what they're looking at, explore every single option. Don't leave any stone unturned, because you have, if you now you believe you have your option, your short term / slightly long term, intermediate term quarterback, make the most of it. Try to find that guy that you're very confident in will be the quarterback of the future, for your team.
I think that's next year's draft.
Yeah. Maybe
I'm not looking at the quarterback of the future being an undrafted free agent.
You just never know. I'm just saying,
explore.
Don't leave. What I'm saying is, ultimately, is don't leave any stone unturned. You have Sam Ehlinger, you have Jack Cohn, so you're gonna see what can happen there. Yes, maybe next year in the draft you get somebody. But what I'm saying is, ultimately, is I don't want them to wait until 2024, the draft, and Matt Ryan's retired and we're taking a flyer on somebody in the third round. Not to say, we mentioned, a couple of quarterbacks that we think highly of that got drafted in the third round, but just in general, not waiting until that last minute to be okay, this guy randomly. Because, what if you fall into a situation like this year where it's another very light quarterback class?
Right.
Because what we've seen from the Colts is they'll always be in that middle round, except for the 1 year that they drafted, number 1 overall here lately with Andrew Luck. I don't foresee them having a number 1 overall pick or a top 5 or 10 pick season with Matt Ryan at the helm.
Next year, Aiden O'Connell.
I'm just overall saying leave no stone unturned. If you can find a guy, find a guy. Again, obsessed with getting Matt Ryan weapons, which it looks like they did that, and offensive line depth, which they've done that. So moving on from there, I just, I want to see them look at more veteran guys. And I know you mentioned that earlier, B. Scott, start bringing in some of the veteran names. The names I'm going to list off are probably the ones that are more unattainable for the Colts.
I don't know.
But I still want to see, something along these lines. So, of course, we can't say Tyrann Mathieu anymore. He just went to the Saints. Julio Jones.
Good for him. Good for him.
For sure.
Hometown there. Good.
Yeah.
That's a good fit.
So I'm thinking, Julio Jones, OBJ, Jarvis Landry, wide receiver, get one more wide receiver in that room. Nate Soldier's available out of, he was with the
Giants.
He's at left tackle out there. You have, those might be pipe dreams, but if the Colts can grab one of those guys, it's just,
hard to tell. Some of those names are pipe dreams, though. I think those are good targets now. Yeah. Now, Jarvis Landry is apparently in advanced talks to go back to Cleveland, so that could be any day. But when you look at Julio Jones and OBJ, I don't think either one of those are pipe dreams, to be honest.
Well, it's just with the Colts,
it's doable because of their injury.
Yeah, the Colts.
And honestly,
though. That's the only
apparently thing. The player to keep an eye on that is most likely going to be coming back is T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be a bad thing now. It really wouldn't. So, but yeah, I like I said, for me, the next move the Colts need to make, one, get these wide receivers that you drafted or undrafted and signed, get them with Reggie Wayne. Like, I know when the Colts went down to Cincinnati, they took their full offensive staff and Chris Ballard, and Reggie Wayne absolutely fell in love with Alec Pierce. That is great. I think Alec Pierce is going to just turn into an absolute stud with being coached up by Reggie Wayne. So I think that's key. But yeah, another veteran in the wide receiver room would be helpful, to be honest, because it is still a very young room. When your oldest player in there is Michael Pittman now at this point,
a product of the 2020 draft.
Yeah, you do need a little bit of help. Otherwise, maybe I don't know if there's. Yeah, I'm still not 100% sold at left tackle on Matt Pryor. But really, the next biggest thing the Colts need to look at is interior offensive line depth. So, I don't know, offensive line depth and wide receiver depth, they're still the two biggest needs that they need to address. And that will be happening. It's going to happen because, look, there's going to be guys that are going to get cut because of how many players teams drafted. And then, and I wouldn't be surprised to see players like OBJ or Julio Jones still not with a team as we get closer to training camp. Because look, Julio Jones had an injury-filled season last year, and OBJ is coming off of a knee injury suffered in the Super Bowl. Now, I feel like most likely OBJ still goes back to the Rams because there's that connection there. They feel like they owe each other, but I wouldn't be mad to see OBJ that they took a flyer on him at all. Honestly, I would prefer him over Julio.
Me too, yeah.
Because I feel like what we saw from Julio last year is what we started seeing from Andre Johnson when the Colts brought him in.
That's what one of my buddies from work said too. He's like, this is Andre Johnson 2.0 if they bring him in. And
now, Julio is a little bit younger. So yeah, I will say that. There is a higher likelihood of Julio Jones rebounding than Andre Johnson, mostly because you're bringing in Julio Jones and pairing him up with the quarterback that made him a Pro Bowl wide receiver. So there's that connection there. So but the Colts, I feel like they will make moves. It just has to be at the right price for them. And I think that's why you haven't seen these moves made. There's still question marks on some of these players. And hey, get ready because there's going to be other guys that are going to get cut. And when the Colts will pounce is when we get to the training camp time of year and roster trimming has to be done. That's where they'll pick up some key veterans at that point in time as well.